My name is Adriane Ohanesian. I'm an American photographer and photojournalist. I'm 31 years old, and I've spent the last 7 years, so 2010 to present, living and working around East Africa, mainly in Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia. I'll go anywhere photography takes me, but my focus has been on Africa. This was a photograph that was taken in Darfour in Sudan. I was with a rebel group, the Sudan Liberation Army, and this is a group that's led by a man named Abdul Wahid. And in this area of Darfur, the government doesn't allow journalists or aid groups or the United Nations into this area. It's a very hard to access area, and it's very difficult to see active conflict in these parts. And so this hand, this arm, is from a dead body of a government soldier. So this had been someone that had been killed by the rebel forces that I was with. And I believe the body had been there for about a week or 10 days. And we were walking on a small mountain path between abandoned towns that had been caught up in the fighting. And there were many bodies scattered around the side of the mountain, and this was just one of them. And the body was badly decomposed, but the hand looked very real still, very intact. And there's also something strange about seeing a body that's just left out in the open, because you'll only see this with bodies that can't be taken back by the group that they're originally from, and anyone who can access their own dead will remove the bodies. So this one had just been left because it was an enemy who had been killed. For me, showing the hand, we know what this is. It's a body lying on the ground, and this was a part of the body that looked a bit preserved, and could kind of tell that this person had fallen and their hand was stretched out. So I think that's part of what drew me to this hand. And I think somehow we know now, we have so many images of what bodies look like. And this was just a detail shot that I wanted to capture. So this is an area in Sudan as well. It's South Kordofan. It's another area in Sudan that is controlled by a rebel group, a different rebel group. This is the Sudan People's Liberation Army North, and they're also fighting against the government of Sudan. And so this little girl, her name is Chichia, and her family's home had been bombed by the government. The government flies planes very high above the land and drops bombs indiscriminately, so they can't really aim, they can't really target, they just drop bombs. And so one of the bombs had landed outside of her family's home, and some of the pieces of the bomb, the shrapnel of the bomb, had severed her arm quite badly. And we had heard this had happened, and the building she's in is actually a clinic, it's a hospital. And you can't tell that by the photograph because there are no resources. There's no lighting, there's no running water. There are just some hospital beds that are actually made out of old ammunition boxes. And so that's where she's sitting. And this was early in the morning. You can see even the lines of the roof in the photograph. There are holes in the roof where the sun is coming through, which is the shadow and the light behind her. And she had just woken up that morning, and they were preparing to change the bandage on her arm to clean the wound. And so she had sat up on the bed just before the doctor was going to clean. Photographing here is actually quite difficult because there is no light, there's no electricity, and you have to work with the light that you're given. And in this situation, the light coming through the roof was incredible. There were these small slivers of light, and you can tell it seems like she's in a scary place, an uncomfortable place. It doesn't look like a facility or a hospital. And so I saw the light coming across her face. I needed to highlight her eyes, and I also wanted to highlight her wound, but also these slivers of light on the back wall kind of mirrored the shape of her missing arm as well. I think there are some situations where it's hard to make a beautiful photograph. You have to move around a lot, you have to find the right light. But I think the photographs that I like, the photographs that I tend to choose, are photographs that weren't difficult to take. You're kind of given, you're given a gift sometimes, like this photograph or like the photograph of Chichia. You walk into a place and the photograph is already there. You don't have to try too hard to make it. Maybe you have to move one way or another and wait for someone's face to turn a certain way, but those images aren't difficult to make. And I think with this photograph, I had been walking around. This is a refugee camp in South Sudan, in a place called Bentu. It's one of the largest refugee camps in South Sudan for internally displaced people. And in this image, I had been walking in and out of so many homes that morning, and finally the sun came up and I was seeing magical light coming into all of the homes. And sometimes I'd walk into a home and there would be nothing. And I think that's something, as a photographer, you learn over time that you can't force a photograph. So if a photograph is there, it's wonderful, and you try to work with the scene. And if it's not, then you continue walking. And I walk a lot. I spend a lot of time not photographing, looking for the right moment. And I think with this image, I had been talking to some women outside of this house who were cooking, and I just looked in the door and saw the light coming through, and that's when I was able to take the photograph. So maybe I should spend more time in one location, but I tend to move around quickly.